Hello, friends, and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz from Sassy's LLC, and I have a slightly sassy project for you today. I know you're shocked, but this one I knew I wanted to make as soon as I saw the alphabet soup die set. We have a fork and a spoon. We have an entire alphabet to make whatever custom sentiments we want. So this is actually a really simple card design. I am taking the forks from that die set and I am stacking them up because I'm a little bit nuts. I will say that took a while. You don't have to. You certainly could just cut them out individually. So I'm stacking mine 3 deep. My top layer is a very, very thin, like specialty matte silver cardstock. And then the other 2 layers are 100-pound grade cardstock. So I do get some nice dimension. It's like a very light chipboard by the time I'm done. Then I used our letter dies to cut out this sentiment, I forking love you. When I saw this, I died laughing. A couple of years ago for Christmas, I got my husband and both my sons little custom engraved forks. And my husband says, I forking love you. And they eat with these things, right? Like, it's hilarious to me. So I am laying down each of my little letters. I used wet glue. I wanted to be able to wiggle them into place, but you could put rip and stick tape behind them. And then I just dot glue on there, tap it on the back of my hand. You could use scratch paper to get off any excess. And I have this really great line at the bottom of my card that made it pretty easy to line them up. They're very blocky. Okay. And so some bonds, it's hard for me sometimes to figure out if I've got everything set up the way I should, but this one, not a problem. I knew I wanted to start with the fork right above this because I was worried that if I didn't start there, I was going to be moving my way down the card and I was going to have to cut forks in half going the long way. And that was going to be really, really difficult. Then it was about figuring out my spacing. So I wanted something I knew I would be able to repeat over and over, whether you're using a fork or a spoon or any item that you're going to repeat. It's about kind of figuring out what are the markers. So I have the tines of one fork are just below or to the right of the sort of roundest, fattest part of the fork, right where it hits the neck of it. Then the other spacing question was, how far apart are the forks going to be? And so you can see the bottom of each fork is lining up as close as I can to the same part of the fork below it. So essentially the tines are lining up with that neck, the narrowest part of the neck, and the bottom of the fork is lining up with the widest part of that solid bit of the fork that's right below the tines. That gives me a way to lay these all down as best I can in the exact same spot. I'm using the same technique for these that I did for our letters. When I put that glue on the tines of the fork, I just dot it on the back of my hand. It doesn't bother me at all. I don't have a glue allergy and it's less cleanup. Like, I'm less likely to stick my hand onto the piece of scrap paper where I might otherwise tap off that glue. So certainly you don't have to do it that way, but it's easy for me. Then I'll trim off the excess and I want to reuse those leftover pieces. So I'm being really careful. My scissors are pretty sharp, but I will say at 3 layers of cardstock, it did take a little bit of muscle, but it's not hard. This is just a little time consuming. But for this particular card, I don't mind, honestly. It's going to be for my husband. His birthday and Father's Day are right next to each other. And I'm a gifter. In the past, I would buy a bunch of gifts, like thoughtful things, and he would typically really like them, be a little surprised. But like, we're just at that age where we don't need more stuff, you know? So I'll probably get him like some fancy salsas, and then we hide cards around the house. I have 2 little boys and we will just write little notes and leave them all over, and some will be obvious because if he doesn't find a few the first day, the boys get a little wiggly. But it usually takes him a week or more to find them all, and I really love that. So at the top, I was very careful to try to maintain the spacing between the forks, right, as they're stacking on top of each other. I'm super comfortable clipping off tines or the ends of forks because they're small pieces, but I did not think I'd be able to trim clear through the middle of a fork and keep my line straight. And so I am just You can see me. I'm hacking away at it. I am sort of hitting it carefully and being careful not to pull the fork off of the cardstock. If I had waited for the glue to dry a little longer, that would have helped. But now we're just filling in, right? I did have to make another fork or two. This part got a little bit tricky. I went to lay down the last one and realized that if I just put the bottom of the fork next to the letters, it was going to be in the wrong spot. So I have the die on the right just to kind of figure out where the spacing of the other fork on that line would be. And then I'll use my scissors to trim off the bottom of the fork so that this is going to follow the pattern of the rest of the card. I was as straight as I could. Is it perfect? Nope. But then again, as you can probably tell from the rest of the card, neither is our family, and that's kind of how we like it. Once I get all these final pieces glued down and then trimmed, I'm going to add a little matte layer around the outside edge. So that craft cardstock is 3.5 by 4 3/4, and I cut my black layer to be ever so slightly bigger than that. So it's 3 5/8 by 4 7/8. I wanted just that little pop of something to help it stand out before we put it on our card base. Before we do that, I have one more sassy little note to leave on the inside. I'm using just a regular ruler here, but if you haven't seen the new Pear Blossom Press ruler, it would be perfect for this because it gives you that center line where you can line everything up. I started with the S of spoon because that's my center point, and then I went down to the end, and then I'll go to the left, and I'm going to work backwards to try to maintain the spacing of all my letters. I went back and forth here on whether or not I should put the actual spoon die on the inside. I still might go back and do it. I'm not sure. So the outside's going to say, I forking love you, and the inside says, want a spoon? I'm adding on a blue sort of A2 panel to my card base. I did the inside before I added anything else because I was a little nervous, right? I'd come this far. I wasn't sure it was going to end up straight or I was going to have the patience to finish it. I did. It worked. But I am going to be really careful here. So I have some black foam on the back of my panel, and then I'm going to add wet glue so I get some float time. I am terrible at lining these things up when there is a larger margin. And again, the Pear Blossom Press tea ruler would help with this. I didn't have mine yet. This was like the week before Creativation where I got to meet Amanda and Tanisa in person for the first time. But here is our final card project, my friends. I love this one so much. You'll have to let me know what you think. Thank you all so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.